Episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. This morning, folks, I'm with Matt Kormann. Now, Matt is the CEO, president of ATA, Archery Trade Association, and they are the heart and soul of archery industry. And Matt hails out of Marietta, Georgia. Then has an interesting career from rock and roll to Freeman. If you've ever gone to a conference, Freeman's there to unload and load and set up. And just a very interesting guy. And he's an avid archer. Yes, he's in the game. He's a certified USA archery judge, level 2 instructor. And he loves the bow hunt. So even though he's running the quintessential iconic ATA, he still gets out and gets his hands dirty. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Bruce. I feel very fortunate to be here with you today.
Yeah, it's exciting. And I was sharing in the warm-up, how I missed ATA. I had a really good excuse for missing ATA last year. But I'll be there this year, mic in hand, and doing, on the floor interviews. And I'm a voting member for POMA, Professional Outdoor Media Association. So I've got my press credentials. And so I'm ready to meet up with some of my guests and not some of the leaders. I will meet with the leaders of in the archery industry, and you're the heart and soul of it, Matt. And why did you come to ATA? Let's start right there. How did your journey take you to the president of ATA?
I love that question, mostly because when I've heard other people answer it wherever they might be in their careers, it tends to evolve over time. And I love that question because my answer really for the last year has stayed the same. It was this really unique opportunity that blended, my professional career. You mentioned, where I had been previously for almost 18 years and this passion that I had found outside of work at the time for target archery. Watching my daughter compete internationally and trying to learn as much as I could about that sport and get engaged as deeply as I could in that sport. And when this opportunity came along, that was really the blend of those two things, my professional life and that passion that I had found for 4 or 5 years leading up to that. It was just a chance I could not take. It's funny, and maybe this is where the story evolves a little bit, Bruce. I probably have not told this story this way before, publicly anyway. The individual who was trying to find the person for this role came to me and said, "Hey, I know you love archery, and I know you kind of been in the trade show industry. Do you know anybody who might be a good fit for this job?" And so I immediately, Bruce, I think I came up with a list of 6 or 8 folks and started sending them off to him. And I wasn't sleeping very well for like a week, and my wife finally pulled me aside. She's like, "What is going on?" I said, "Well, I'm thinking about this job. I'm thinking I might want to throw my hat in that ring." The easiest way to wrap that up is to say, I guess the rest is history.
Wow, that was he soft pedaling or seeing if you were interested, but didn't know how to ask you if you were interested. That's interesting because that's not a bad technique to go to somebody and say, "Hey, I'm looking for this sort of person. Do you know of any?" Instead of coming out and say, "Hey, Matt, I've checked you out. You sort of kind of fit what I'm looking for or we're looking for. Let's talk about it." I don't know which way did that go?
Yeah, we knew each other quite well outside of all of these industries, and he knew me well enough to know that my intention was to stay where I was. I loved the company I worked for. I still do. I have great respect for them. I love that industry, the trade show and events industry. I really enjoyed the job that I was doing and the people I was working with. I think honestly, Bruce, I don't think he thought I was going anywhere. So I think it was genuinely, "Hey, these two industries, is there somebody that you think might be a fit?" And then I think I kind of blew him away a little bit when I picked up the phone a week later and said, "What do you think about me?" And yeah, it was a long road after that, several months between that first phone call and winding up starting here I'm a few days past 1 year here. But boy, in some ways it feels like it's been forever, and in other ways it feels like it's just gone by in a blink.
Yeah, because ATA is a huge part of whitetail hunting. I don't know, my dad is dated, but I know the hunting industry in itself from uh, shooting sports is 37 billion. There's about 15 million of us that hunt. A large percentage of us archery hunt and gun hunt, but uh, you see more traction. I have more people on the show that are archery hunters, and because they do it longer, they spend more time at it. Some gun hunters, and gun hunters don't get mad at me, but a week before the season they'll go out and shoot their 30-06, 270, whatever their gun is, their 336 Marlin, and they'll shoot it and go, yep, same place it was last year, and they'll get their gear out and they'll hang it out outside, and they'll go deer hunting. Archers aren't like that. We're 365 hunters.
Yeah.
And it's a completely different, industry from the archer's eyes. I mean, because we live and breathe whitetails 365, 24/7. I just spent 3 days over on a new property over in Nebraska, and just scouting it, and I know now where I'm going to put my mock scrapes and all that. But I drove a couple hundred miles just to do that, just to get on new property. And I had I hunt with a crossbow, but I had that with me, and I never cocked it. I mean, just it was there just in case Mr. Wonderful got stupid, which he didn't. Which he didn't, but I just think of that because ATA is so important, folks. If you're not a member, you don't attend, and you're involved in the archery business, you have to go to ATA. And that's not paying me to say that, but you need to be there because everybody in the industry, I remember Brian and Mariah Hardy, they started Hardy Face Paint a number of years ago. I helped them get going on my podcast. I helped launch them, and they get a thriving business. Why? Because you call it the incubator section or something for new companies. What's the title of that level of involvement? Is it incubator
the
or
zone?
Huh?
The innovation zone.
Innovation zone. Talk about that for a little bit, because there's people out there that say, I got this great idea. Well, there's no better place to launch it than ATA. And this is not a paid commercial for ATA or an infomercial, but it's the truth, though, Matt. It's the flat truth.
And that's a great area for especially a new business starting out, a new product starting out. I think we've all been there. Or we know someone who's been there trying to build a business from the ground up, build a brand or product from the ground up. Finances are always tight. It's always tough to get somewhere. So that's an opportunity for folks in the first couple of years of their business to get out and get in front of the buyers, the pro shop owners, kind of rub elbows with other manufacturers and get some education under their belt as well, in a way that they can't otherwise if they're an established company. It's really is a pretty tightly controlled space that we're careful about who gets in there, and you've got to be one of those newer. You've got to be a very new product, very new company in order to get into that spot. And it can be a great opportunity to launch a business.
Yeah, it's so important, folks, to be involved in your industry, and because the averages, if you go out and look, we all spend $800 to $1,000 just on new gear every single year. And that isn't traveling, that isn't licenses. It's just, there's a lot of money in our industry. And so you might as well, get involved with the people that are running it. And so when you think about, you had a long dating process to become president. Why did you just finally say, I'm going to do this? What was the driving force behind that?
Yeah. And right when I started, I think, and there's another one of those chances for me to see how my answer to that question has changed over the last year. When I first started, it was really because it was an opportunity to blend the work life and the personal life into a job, which very few of us get an opportunity to do in our careers. So at the outset, it was that. But then I've sort of I've been able to copy, if you will, the answers that our staff gives me when I sit down with them one-on-one and ask them why they're here. And to an individual, just about every one of them says, because at the ATA here, I have an opportunity to make an impact on an entire industry. I can't do that very many places. And that's really become true for me. It's sort of daunting and fascinating all at the same time. To think about the fact that we were fortunate enough to get to work with this huge industry and all these great and passionate companies, manufacturers and retailers and distributors. And at the same time, we get a voice in there, and we get to help them try and grow the industry and improve the industry and evolve the industry. That's not many people get a chance to do that either.
No, they don't, because you have a board of directors, and they kind of talk to the president and executive team, and they say, this is kind of where we want to sort of kind of take this company and go make it happen.
Yeah, and that has really been exactly what you're speaking to there, Bruce, has really been our focus as a staff and especially as a leadership team working with the board over the course of the last year. And I think that's what we hope folks, members in general of the ATA, will start to see and hear and feel from us right now, if they haven't already started to see it and hear it from some of us individually. That this is. I'm flattered when you say that I'm at the center of this industry or the ATA. That's really, I don't view it that way, though. Yeah, I have a role to play and I have a job to do. But the reality is the ATA belongs to our members, and it's super important that we remind ourselves that as staff, that the board understands that, and we all do at this point. We're making really, really big efforts to ensure that our members understand that as well, and that we're acting in the right way. That it doesn't belong to the board, and it doesn't belong to me or the staff. It really is. It's a service to our members, but owned by the members, and it really is. We exist to serve that group, and if we're not doing that, boy, we're not doing our jobs very well.
And that's why you have association at the end of it. And I was alluding to, typically you get your marching orders and you go. Well, you do have a board of directors, and a lot of manufacturers are on your board of directors. Like, they got to represent. But, when it breaks down, the better you run your operation. And I think this is my personal 2 cents. That's your biggest challenge, and that's your biggest driver, is running the organization to the optimum level to serve all your members at the highest possible ability so they can grow their business.
Absolutely. And that really is, that's another big chunk of the focus there is what can we do on behalf of our members to help grow the industry as a whole. And we can't be focused on trying to grow one segment of it or another. It's really trying to raise the entire industry to a better level, a healthier level, so that everybody benefits from it. And that part gets daunting, but it's also a lot of the excitement around doing the job.
Well, to me, it would sure as heck keep it interesting.
For sure. Different every day.
Yeah. And, you brought up something, growth, and we're all concerned in the outdoor industry. We're all concerned about the growth of our industry. And, there's so many youth today that aren't embracing it like I did and like you did and like all my guests did. And that concerns me, one, as a hunter itself, but that concerns me about being professional in the outdoor, media business. What's your thought on that?
Well, I come at it a couple of different ways. First, I came to the sport late. I came to target archery late. I came to hunting even later. I grew up in the suburbs and in a family that did not hunt. And so it took me a while to get here. Now that I'm hunting, every week that I'm not traveling, I've been in a tree stand one day so far this season. Since the beginning of September, I'll be out on my fourth sit this season this evening again, and I am absolutely addicted. And I think I'm an example of the fact that it's not. Yes, getting youth engaged in archery and bow hunting is super important, but I think it can be just as important to get folks like me, professional folks, working folks who have an interest, are intrigued by bow hunting, but just haven't given it a shot because they're intimidated. It can be super intimidating to start. And it can be really hard to find somebody who can be a great mentor to you. That's the part that every great mentor program that I've had a chance to speak to or speak with and learn about what they're doing, the focus has not been, okay, we're only going to go after adults or we're only going to go after kids. The focus really has been, we need to go after anybody who's got an interest in getting out into the woods and chasing after some game. And the successful ones are doing exactly that. And it's certainly a long, long road ahead of us in that regard. But I think especially in the last couple of years, we've seen some great success with mentoring. We've seen that the states, the state agencies are hugely committed to the R3 process, especially where it's focused on recruitment of new hunters. And also, again, not focused just on kids or just on adults, but making sure that they're trying to attract anybody who's got an interest in the sport and getting outside and just starting and trying to make it a little bit easier for someone to start in the sport, because that's the hard part.
Yeah, I have a friend. Last year he was the National Rural Educator of the United States, and I was just visiting with he and his daughter and his wife last week in Denver, and he was there to hand the mantle or hand the trophy or the plaque off to the new person. And he runs in Western New York. He runs a fully certified, accredited high school curriculum for kids in the outdoors, and it gets into ecology and habitat improvement. They have on-site, they have a deer research facility, they have a trout rearing facility. I mean, it's unbelievable what they're doing. And the reason I bring him up is I'm going to connect the both of you because you need to talk to Scott Jordan. I mean, just an unbelievable guy, and he's been recognized by his peers as being one of the best educators in rural America. And he's a guy that I think, would give you some insights that you can't get anyplace else.
Yeah, I'd love that. Yeah, it's amazing what's happening in certain parts of the country in education. Not just the less formal mentoring programs, but also the more formal educational opportunities. There's huge potential there. Again, both for established target programs to continue growing, and also to, I think, hopefully expand really significantly and start up some new bow hunting programs as well, for sure.
Yeah, and the other one I was thinking of is Mr. William Crawford, and he runs the President's Scholars Outdoor Program, University of Montevallo. I believe that's in Georgia, if memory serves me correct. He'd be a great guy to have conversations with, because those are two people I know personally that are setting the bar extremely high and creating environments where kids learn about the outdoors and how that works, but also the career paths that they can have, which is substantial.
Yeah, especially with the cost of higher education and kind of this. Mike Rowe is one of my favorite individuals on the internet, and I love his stories about, and sometimes he goes off on a rant about how how there's this stigma about folks who don't have 4-year college degrees, and I'm one of those folks without a 4-year college degree, and there's great potential, especially in the outdoors, for to make a living doing something that you're really passionate about. But I think there's sometimes that I keep using the word. There's that stigma of, is that a real job? Sure, it is. Especially if you're passionate about it, if you can do something that you enjoy doing, there's tremendous opportunity that doesn't require just going into massive debt to get a degree to go do something else.
Yeah, there's not personally enough guys that started literally in their back room or their front room or wherever. They started a company and they've grown it to a multi-million-dollar, if not a $1 billion company in the outdoor industry. And it's
Sure.
just there's plenty of that. And I like how you said college is important. I went to college because I wanted to play football and run track. That's why I went to college. I didn't go to college for a degree. And what would I have done? I probably would have been, if I didn't go to college, I probably would have turned out to be a fireman or a professional lifeguard, or something along that. And I probably would have ended up in the outdoor industry someplace. But,
Sure.
like it is not, I graduated from college and started selling and got an MBA and started doing some, interesting things. But, folks listening to this, find out what you're passionate about. I learned that, was told that a long time ago. Find out what you're passionate about and go do that, and the money will come. Well, how am I going to pay my bills? That's a concern, but that shouldn't be your overall concern, because the last thing that you want to do is get in the position that you hate just because you're making a boatload of money and you hate the job, because it'll kill you.
Oh, sure.
One way or another.
Oh, sure. Yeah, and when I was pursuing a degree, when I was in college, I thought I was going to be an archaeologist. I thought I was going to go out and play in the dirt for a living, and I lucked into a career doing sound for bands, and had a blast doing that, and was really kind of convinced even through that point that, oh my goodness, Bruce, I'm never going to wear a suit. I'm never going to sell anything. That's not me. Well, and then I luck into another career where I'm selling, and I enjoyed the heck out of it. I think it's one of those things where you got to give it a shot. You got to give something a shot, even if you're not certain that it might be for you. But yeah, there are great opportunities out there, even if you think, yeah, maybe that's not for me. But you try it, give it a go, and it often works out.
Yeah, I amen to that. So listeners, just take a step back, and if you're graduating from high school or you're in your 30s and 40s and going, you're waking up, going to work, and coming home just because you're going to serve your family and do what you need to do. I get that, but really take a look at it, because I didn't realize, Mike's complete background before the show. But I know, he was smart enough to realize, what he wanted to do, and he went after it. So kudos to you, man.
Appreciate you, Bruce.
So what are the challenges right now? You're looking at the Archery Trade Association, the archery industry, and that's from mom and pops that are fighting Walmart and big box stores to major manufacturers that got people, copying their stuff. I know I bought what I thought was a Harris bipod, and it wasn't, and I broke apart. And so I said, I need this part. So I called them up, and I said, I need this part. That's an F-105. Send it down to us, and we'll replace it. I said, okay. So I sent it down. They said, this isn't your part. This was made in China. This is a knockoff. I go, oh. So you lost the sale, and I didn't pay for a Harris bipod. I said, nope. So how do you combat that pirateering, or I don't know what the word you call it, but competitive business is enough. Now we got people that are copying what we're trying to do, and that's going to have a huge impact on the revenues.
Yeah, it does, and it's we certainly have some members, especially manufacturing members, for whom that is their biggest challenge right now, and they can tell you down to the dollar how much they've lost in sales, and it's in some cases it's many hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think the first thing to recognize is that we need to understand exactly what we're talking about. There's a big difference between knockoffs and counterfeit product. And you bought a counterfeit product. If it was branded as a Harris bipod, and you purchased that item, and it turns out that Harris didn't manufacture it, well, okay, that's a counterfeit item. If it was branded as a Maris bipod and it looked exactly the same, but it's branded slightly differently, that's a knockoff. And it can be very easy for a manufacturer to identify a counterfeit. It can be very difficult for a manufacturer to take a fight to court over who came first on the knockoff issue. The counterfeit issue is pretty cut and dry. You're using my brand to sell my product, and that's not okay. On the other one, you're manufacturing something that looks just like the thing that I'm making, but you're putting your own name on it. And now we're going to have to fight over that. That's often the case. The best example I give to that, and how challenging that is Apple and Samsung have been in court now for 6, 8, 10 years fighting over intellectual property, and the courts can't even figure it out. And so it would be nearly impossible, for example, for the ATA to step into an intellectual property dispute and try and figure that out. That's really for the courts to decide. Where the ATA does and can get involved is when there is a cut and dry case of counterfeiting, and we can restrict membership along those lines, and we have taken action. But in terms of, I would say, if I'm a manufacturer, especially if I'm a small manufacturer, and I'm concerned about, first of all, if I'm a small manufacturer and I'm not concerned about counterfeiting or intellectual property violations, you better get concerned about it. Because if you have we had a presenter from the Intellectual Property Rights Center, which is under the Department of Homeland Security. We had him at the show last year, and I loved how he opened his session. He talking to a bunch of manufacturers, he said, okay, raise your hand if you're concerned about counterfeiting and intellectual property rights. And a bunch of folks raised their hands. And he said, okay, if you're not, I'm going to ask you a series of questions. If you have a good product and it's making you money, I'm telling you right now, you need to be concerned, because somebody out there is going to try and take advantage of your intellectual property. The fact is, if you've got a good product and you're making money at it, you've got a problem, even if you don't know you have one. And so we're taking that up a notch again this year. We've got one of our member attorneys who's going to present kind of a next level session on that same topic this year, and kind of help folks get a basic understanding of what they can and should do. And then what we'll provide to any of our members who want it is just a kind of a 2-page takeaway of what steps they ought to be considering, with links to other material they can consume online. But ultimately, the encouragement, and I know a lot of folks, especially young businesses, don't want to hear this, but the best thing they can do is get aligned with a good attorney who can give them great advice. This is such a challenging area. It's not worth risking your business to not spend a little money on somebody who knows what they're doing and can guide you and counsel you through that kind of stuff.
That's great advice, because you work so hard, to create something, get it going. Then all of a sudden, once it hits the radar screen, you're going to have people coming after your widget. I mean,
oh yeah,
it's just going to happen, and just subtle changes here and there keeps you out of the trademark thing. Because on my Harris bipod, the plate was welded from the counterfeit, but Harris, it's screwed in.
Yeah, and Bruce, funny you mentioned that also because I heard a story from a very well-known manufacturer, archery manufacturer, who talked to me about getting called over by a head coach for a national archery team and said, "Hey, your equipment's not holding up as well as it used to." Well, this manufacturer was about as offended as he could be, and he said, "Hold on a second, show me what you're talking about." I walked him over, showed him the piece of equipment, and until he took it apart, he couldn't tell that it wasn't his. But the second he took it apart, he said, "Yeah, this is a counterfeit item. This is not mine."
They're that good, folks. They reverse engineer them, and they know that they run the numbers and know that they can get part of the market share. And I would say everybody in business today in America is at risk if you have a successful product, period.
Yeah, and I think the other piece of advice, and this presents more of a challenge and costs more money, so not everybody can do it. But my piece of advice to any manufacturer out there, and a little story that goes along with it, is, I've talked to any number of American manufacturers who say we don't manufacture anything outside of the States. We manufacture everything in our facilities here in the United States. And I've had to start asking them, okay, have you protected your trademarks and your brands and your intellectual property overseas? Well, no, because I'm manufacturing everything here. Well, I'm here to tell you, you're going to have to start protecting yourself overseas, because just because you're making it here doesn't mean somebody else isn't making it over there. And that's the next level, and it's even more insidious, is that we've got overseas manufacturers within their own country starting to trademark American brands, and then they can, quote unquote, legally produce those items within their home country. And it's terrible, and it's really hard to extricate yourself from something like that once it's done. We've got several of our members trying to fight through that now, and several others who are now proactively getting over there and trying to protect themselves. But it's not inexpensive. It's not as expensive as you might think it is. But again, that's one of those situations where, attorneys aren't bad folks. They get a bad rap a lot of time. But boy, if you can get protected, if you can make that kind of an investment in protecting yourself and your brand and your product, it's absolutely worth it.
Well said. And folks, we're just going to switch it up now and talk to Matt about whitetail hunting. He's passionate about it. How did you really get into it? Who kicked you off?
My first day on the job a year ago was my first day hunting anything. And
oh my goodness.
Yeah. And it's interesting because can you imagine? I mean, Bruce, tell me where I could get hired where I would be surrounded by a better group of bow hunting mentors.
There's no place on planet Earth.
No, there's no way. I mean, it started with Jay McIninch, who, he and I started talking before I started working here a couple weeks beforehand, because there was a bit of a gap there. And it started with him really kind of coaching me through. And he was, oh my goodness, the man has a mind for detail. Scientist, right? I mean, the man has a mind for detail, and especially around bow hunting, he may be unmatched in that regard. So he kind of kicked me off in terms of what to do, what not to do, what to bring, what not to bring, and then a couple other staffers did the same for me, and then and I don't do all that well with heights. I'm a little afraid of heights. And so Greg Brown, who does a lot of work with Suburban Whitetails up there in Northern Virginia, and also helps us with trade show security during the shows, he actually, one-on-one with me, got me comfortable getting 15, 20 feet up in a tree safely and really confidently, to the point now where last Friday evening I climbed up in a tree stand and hung out and didn't even think twice about it. And that's, I think that, I'm probably going to preempt one of your questions here, but if I had one piece of advice for somebody who wants to get, who hasn't hunted before, who wants to get into hunting, it's to be really, really honest with yourself and with whoever's going to help you get into the woods. Because for me, had I not been straightforward with those guys about my fear of heights, I may not hunt, or I'd be in a ground blind out here, in the eastern half of the U.S. There's not a lot of spot and stalk happening out here, so you're gonna go sit somewhere. And I got to tell you, man, I love being up in a tree now. The view that you get, the sun coming through the trees, and it's just an amazing feeling to kind of be up out of the way when the animals on the ground don't even know that you're there. There's just something magical about it. And had I not done that, I wouldn't have had that experience. Had I not really been honest with myself and my mentor, I would not have had that experience.
That's just a great way to explain the best way to approach any new hunter to approach how you're going to be successful. Because if you had just kind of timidly jumped into it or not shared actually your concerns, then you wouldn't have that opportunity just to be outdoors. And that's a huge part of hunting because it takes nanoseconds to pull a trigger, let your fingers go. It doesn't take him any time at all, but the years and the hours leading up to that one point have all been spent outdoors.
Yeah, and it's I think it's easy to we all overuse the phrase "there are no stupid questions," but that's easy to say. It's kind of hard to live that truth. It's I can't tell you how many questions that I've asked any number of mentors that I think are really stupid questions, but if I don't get the answer to them, I know I'm not going to have as good a day in the woods.
Yeah, and coming from your past industry, you're already involved in conventions and large events and managing people and all that. But to transfer your skill sets into and then understand, what companies, manufacturers, the whole gamut, what their product really is. And their product is allowing people to experience something that they wish to do and they're passionate about, and they just make it easier.
Yeah.
They make it better. They have the tools and the fabrics, and it goes on and on and on. But really, they're providing me the resources I need so I can just go out there and I will have whatever I need to do.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, people get wound up sometime about this camo and that bow and all this stuff. They're just tools, they're resources to the end game, and that's your experience in the outdoors. That's my take on it.
Totally. Yeah. Agree completely.
So being a new hunter, tell me about have you killed a deer yet?
I haven't. I've got 3 funny stories about deer. Funny to me, might be embarrassing to somebody else, but no, I've had 2 flat misses. My first sit, it was raining, it was cold. I was in Wisconsin, and I'm 5 minutes, literally, I'm watching the clock, right? So I'm 5 minutes into shooting light, and out walks this, which would have been for, I think, any first-time hunter, just a beautiful buck, little 8 or 9 point buck. I would have been absolutely ecstatic about it. And this guy is, I still remember, 16 and a half yards from me. He stood around hanging out 16 and a half yards from my ground blind. And I'm thinking, this was just meant to be. But the problem was, I was thinking about what I was going to do with the meat, what I was going to do with that rack, and how it was going to look hanging in my office. I wasn't, Bruce, I didn't give one thought to my shot at all. And I put that arrow probably 6 feet in front of him. That was just hilarious. And I thought
that was.
Totally. My brain saw that arrow hit the 12 ring on a 3D target. I swear to God, that arrow went right through his vitals. I missed him completely.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I still to this day I cannot tell you what my sight picture looked like. Well, then
That's
my
great.
last
I think that's great because
yeah
you were so into it and you were so excited as a three. You if you're a target archery shooter, you have to be so focused because the competition's so great. I mean,
yeah
you're in the zone, you know,
yeah
and you're
yep
shooting pinpoint. You're shooting flies on
yep.
paper.
Oh
Oh
yeah,
my goodness.
yeah. And my heart rate never increased. I was totally calm because I wasn't thinking about the shot. I was thinking about everything but what I should have been thinking about. And then yeah, 5 or 6 sits later that same trip, that same week, my last sit saw a really skittish, gorgeous 12 point. I mean, he was beautiful, but it was a tough shot. I had to kind of lean. I was up in a tree stand. I had to kind of lean to my right. He knew I was there. I mean, he was skittish as heck. And I had to kind of lean to my right. I had like 5 minutes of shooting light left. This was in the evening now. And I was leaned to my right, and I was very careful to get a good sight picture. But the second I released, I went to go look to see if I'd hit him. And so I pushed the bow down right on release, and I hit my broadhead, just nailed a rock right underneath him, sounded like a gunshot. And that guy was gone. I mean, he went from 0 to 60 in a second and a half. It was cool to watch him run away, but I completely missed him.
So you dropped
'Cause I
your
was too
hand.
excited. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I just pushed the shot a little low. But it was one of those things. So what I have done now is I got an opportunity. We've got a back deck off the house. I got a couple 3D targets in the backyard. So I sit in a bar stool up there, and I'll get my body in weird angles and I'll try those shots because I never know what the shot's going to be. So I'm trying to get myself a little more comfortable with those abnormal, those unusual shots that experienced bow hunters know they have to make. But me being completely inexperienced, I wasn't prepared for that. I'd gotten out back and stood on the ground and shot my target. I'd sat up on the deck and shot the targets, but I hadn't really kind of challenged myself with those new shots. And I've certainly seen some deer this year, but have not had anything close enough to shoot, and or have had trees between me and the deer, or they've been behind me and haven't been able to get a good angle on them. So that's my whitetail experience. I did get a spring Jake with a shotgun this year. Dan
Good.
Forster took me out and called one in, and yeah, made a heck of a 25-yard shot and had some delicious bird after that.
Did you say Hank Forster from QDMA?
No, Dan.
Oh.
This happens all the time between Hank Forrester and Dan Forster.
Yeah,
Yeah.
QDMA is a fantastic organization, Quality Deer Management Association folks.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump in there because that's where I've been hunting. I've been hunting their land out here just outside of Athens, Georgia. Brian Murphy and Hank and John Eastman out there have been really kind in inviting me out to shoot.
You're a member, right? You're a member,
yeah,
right?
I am a QDMA member. Yeah, I'm new member this year. Yep.
Thank you. Oh, that's great. Yeah, and the thing is, when I first started hunting out west, I really never had to shoot from my knees. And sometimes when you're in on top of elk and stuff, you're shooting from your knees, and it's just, you never think about it till all of a sudden that's the shot you got, and you go, I've never done this, and then it typically doesn't work out well. And
I it's been amazing to me. In my target days back when we were living in Texas, I'd be at the indoor range, and guys that I knew to be really phenomenal target shooters would come in and set a chair down on the shooting line, and a couple of them really struggled to make those first couple shots when they were just transitioning, just learning to shoot sitting down. It can be so unusual. And yeah, you got to practice it. It's, you talked about it at the top of the show, Bruce. It's bow hunting is one of those things where you don't grab the bow and just head out on your first sit that year. You've got to keep the muscles up. You've got to keep the mental game up. And that's not, look, I'm at the point now where I just want to go hunt. So yeah, will I gun hunt again? Absolutely. And I don't begrudge anybody getting out and hunting in whatever way, shotgun, rifle, crossbow, vertical, compound recurve trad, if you just get out, man, whatever you're comfortable with getting out. That's where I think the QDMA has really been successful with their field to fork program, with their mentoring program. Is they get a crossbow in the hands of a new shooter, somebody who's never shot before, never hunted before, and they're getting them up and out and hunting in a matter of a few sessions, which is really impressive.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I just, I'm excited for you because, you'll have some opportunities that some people won't have, and I get that. And to go on properties and to meet people and have people, give you some insights. But the mentorship, the insights, they're available because, like I said at the top of the show, archery hunters are 365, 24/7. They're thinking about their gear. They're thinking about their food plots. They're thinking about travel corridors. My good friend Todd Pringnitz from White Knuckle Production, he just created a new calling tool called Tree Thrasher. So, free shout out for you, Todd. And, he engineers things. He used to be in the ownership of Ricketeer Gear. And, I think of these people that I met and know and everything. And it all comes through ATA because his company wouldn't have grown without exposure and membership in the association. And I started the podcast gushing a little bit, but for archers, you are the heart and soul. And so your position, I'm not trying to put pressure on you, Matt, but your position's so critical for the future of archery hunting in the United States.
Well, and I appreciate that. It's incredibly humbling to hear you say that. And it's very kind of you to talk as you have about the ATA. I think if we as an organization didn't have the position that we have in this industry, I don't think there's any chance that it would have come here. So it's incredible to be a part of this organization that is really revered by folks in the archery and bow hunting industry and in the archery and bow hunting world. And yeah, I honestly, Bruce, I don't feel the pressure. I feel a responsibility for sure, to do as good a job as I can and to ensure that we as a staff are doing as good a job as we can. But yeah, I don't view that as pressure. It's a great responsibility, but it's also been a lot of fun.
That's great. And Matt Kormann he's the president and CEO of ATA. Thank you so much for being a featured guest on Whitetail Rendezvous. And I know my hundreds of thousands of listeners are going to go, wow, I got to check out ATA and I've got to, get involved and just know, folks, that from this man's point of view, I think ATA is in a pretty good place right now.
Well, very kind of you to say, Bruce. Very kind of you to have me on, and I've appreciated the conversation. Even looking more forward to meeting you in person here in Louisville very soon.
Yes, sir.